Hello, everyone. I'm Scott Logan, the CMO of AmplifAI, if you haven't met me yet. And I welcome you to this session for the AI for CX Virtual Summit, where we bring you the latest insights and best practices around AI in the customer experience. Be quick, Fly will unify all your data from structured to unstructured sources, basically anything you have from back of the house systems to any channel into a single view of performance. With this single view of data, Amplify delivers role-specific insights and AI recommended best actions to increase agent performance and coaching. Our comprehensive CX suite includes everything from auto QA to AI-powered coaching and gamification. Over 10,000 teams worldwide use Amplify to boost productivity, improve customer experiences, and drive better results in sales, support, collections, and many more use cases. Before we get started, we'll go over some event details. We'll provide a link to a landing page with the recording, the slides in the days following the webinar. For this session, we'll answer your questions at the end, so please chat them into the Q&A function as you think of them. With that, let's get started. Today's session is titled AI Readiness, Today and Your Future. Brought to you by Fred Stacey, CEO of Cloud Tech Gurus, who has over 20 years of contact center consulting experience in various roles, and Ryan Vaughn, the VP of Global Solutions Consulting at Nextiva, who has 20 plus years of experience as an in-house customer experience leader at several companies, which includes about a decade at Salesforce. So with that, we will level set using a poll. All right. So what is your organization's level of AI maturity? Beginner, just starting out, intermediate, deploying cautiously, advanced, where, you're getting things going across the organization, and lost, where, I'm not supporting Skynet. Let's see what we have. All right, a lot of beginners, a lot of intermediate, a few advanced. Ryan and Fred, where do you see this as a sample size for what you're seeing in the marketplace in general? Fred, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I'm actually surprised nobody is not in support of Skynet. But yeah, I'd say this is pretty common. Most people are at the beginning phases from my experience.
I would agree with that. I don't think a lot of people are saying that they're advanced in the rollout if everything is developing so quickly. And I also agree the Skynet reference is surprising.
Yeah, this is across other polls from all the other sessions. Everyone seems to be somewhere in the middle there, where they know they're
Yep.
getting going or they're implementing some basics. And it's usually bookended with either no or very few responses on the super advanced versus lost. Here we have a little bit more on the advanced side, which is cool as a change from other sessions. I'll let you two take it away from here.
Awesome. So first, I'll do a quick introduction and of myself, a little more, and then Ryan, and then we'll jump right into it. So again, Cloud Tech Gurus CEO. I've been in contact centers for over 30 years on the technology side. I run a company that essentially we're called a TSD, but we sit in between about 200 contact center related technologies and service companies and many consultants who help contact centers go through the process of selecting and acquiring new technology or services. So really happy to be here. Ryan, you want to do a quick intro?
Yeah, happy to, Fred. And thank you, Scott and Amplify, for hosting this. So a little bit about my background. I lead solutions consulting for Nextiva. Nextiva is a UC contact center and a unified CXM company that's been around for about 15 years. I've been here a little under a year now, but definitely learning a lot. My background before that, as Scott said, is I spent about a decade at Salesforce in pre-sales roles. During that time, Salesforce went from a $3 billion company to a $31 billion company, and that was a big change. I spent most of that time on the Service Cloud side, which during that time I was there became their top revenue generating service. So it was an exciting ride. Prior to that time at Salesforce, I spent the years before that in implementation. I was in consulting across multiple SIs. I spent a lot of that time in contact centers. I was focused on customer experience, sales, marketing, and any number of other domains, but just learned a lot about multiple different kinds of industries and processes and the pain involved in these evolutions. But I entered the tech industry back in the 90s, and I continue to be excited about the innovation. I think we're in a pretty amazing time right now, so I'm excited for the conversation.
Excellent. So let's jump right in. I wanted to start out, let's talk, Ryan, about the State of the Union. So from an insider's perspective, where do we see AI today for the contact center and customer experience? Ryan, you want to start out? Where do you see us today?
Yeah, if you take a look at AI, it's rapidly evolving. So you got to go pull the numbers. But if you look at what experts are saying about it, generally they're saying Gen AI in particular is going to add 2.6 trillion to 4.4 trillion dollars annually to the global economy. So this is not something to sneeze at. This is a huge global phenomenon that's changing the way the world works. You look at investment levels coming into these AI companies, it's $56 billion, they say, in 2024. It's rapidly advancing. The numbers, it's probably already exceeded that in 2025. I think really what you're seeing is companies are really aggressively implementing AI, right? They see a green light. They're being told by their shareholders, their board, it's time to go get the benefits of this. They see it as a competitive advantage. They think it's going to help them with their bottom line as they drive more efficiency. In addition to that, I think there's a tension there between companies that are deploying AI in terms of the efficiency they're looking for, along with like customer experience that they're hoping to get out of it. If you look at some of the Forrester comments that they've been making recently, they say 67% of brands are rolling out chatbots. No shocker there, right? We're all running into those all the time. From IBM, they're saying chatbots are able to resolve 80% of routine tasks and customer inquiries. That's pretty phenomenal, right? Just not that long ago is what, 10%, 20%. So there's this sort of tension between the efficiency and the customer experience. We want to give the customers a really good experience, but we also want to get those efficiency gains. I would say from a company perspective, they're very excited about this and the development, but they're not wanting to screw up their customer loyalty. From a customer perspective, I think we all have mixed feelings, right? In our world, we want quick resolution. We want to go get our questions answered quickly without having to go through multiple people, but we also do want to talk to a human, right? And what we're seeing from the studies that are being done is that customers are okay with self-service chatbots in some areas. I just want to check my balance or I want to change a flight. But in most cases, they'll still want to talk to a human. So there's definitely an element of I still want to talk to a person. I think the third element there around kind of the State of the Union is internal company usage. I think this is an area of rapid adoption. We're seeing within my company and other companies just rapid adoption. I think we're realizing a lot of hours are going to these very manual tasks like writing emails, taking notes, following up for meetings, creating decks and reports. And I think that's going up very quickly with these AI tools. At the end of the day, I would say these IT departments are the kind of the long pole in the tent. They're struggling to keep up with the innovation that's coming from the market. They're struggling to keep up with the number of tools that are out there and try to provide those tools to their employees as fast as employees are wanting to consume them. So I think in the short term, what we're seeing is humans plus AI are really the primary path. You hear this comment like our goal is to make every employee as smart as the smartest person in our organization. I think that's very much where most companies are right now. Fred?
Yeah. No, I think when you look at contact center and customer experience in particular, we are the tip of the spear. And I say that because growing up in this industry, literally, I have seen technology evolve over a period of time, but we've always used tools like NLU, NLP, going back to the old text-to-speech nuance days, all the way back to 10 years ago or so when IBM came to market and said, Watson's ready for the contact center. And we've seen a lot of failures, a lot of starts, but I think we're the right place because there's more structured and unstructured data and familiarity with the general use cases that we're talking about today. The big shift, more than anything else, I think, is from the generative side and now AI agents in particular, and where that's taking us. There's still a lot of noise and a lot of companies. Like you said, there's a heavy level of adoption on this. So the early adopter curve, or the normal adoption curve, I should say, of technology in our space is not the same. So I often tell people there's a lot of comments in the industry about artificial intelligence is the next IVR or social media or name your term. And we'll get into this a little bit later, but this is different. The adoption rates are clearly higher than normal technology, and where we're moving and the pace in which we're moving, it essentially is forcing everybody to seriously become change management experts, something we haven't historically been great at I don't even like saying contact center and customer experience as an industry, but for lack of a better term, I guess a practice, we're all being forced really fast to adopt proper change management and engage the entire organization, which I see a lot of companies stumbling over. Most of the time when we see failures in deployments or a return on investment, it's typically coming down to the people, the processes, and of course, all the data and structure and understanding what to ingest, what is the right data that you should be training and tuning on. I'm like you, I'm really excited about where we're at and especially where we're heading. But I think change needs to become the number one focus of organizations and teaching themselves and insight and preparing their teams and organization to really adapt and adopt new technology and move fast. The whole Silicon Valley move fast and break things. In reality, we're all going to have to get comfortable with this, and change is the only constant. And if you're not comfortable, this is going to be some uncomfortable times for you.
Not the industry for you, right?
Exactly. So let's jump into why it's different. I know I touched a little bit, but I'd love to get your insights into this, Ryan.
I share your thoughts on the fact that it is different. I think if you go back and look at the history of technology for the last couple of decades, we've had this sort of one thing after the next. It's IVR, it's IoT, it's whatever, predictive AI. I think AI in the new world of Gen AI is really changing things pretty dramatically, right? Those tools were dramatic because they provided some feature or some function. And ultimately, they were enabling workers and customers to do things, but they still required the human intelligence to be done by people, right? With AI and Gen AI in particular, you're starting to see this like massive leap towards human cognition, essentially, is what it looks like here. They're learning, they're reasoning, they're adapting, they're generating content. It's coming with some human involvement, but a lot of it is now being outsourced to the AI. So that ability to take on those cognitive tasks is really the key difference there. So one example would be, you go get web conferencing during the pandemic and everybody went to Zoom, and that was amazing. All of a sudden we could take our work out of the office and take it home with us, but you still had to have the human go and analyze what's happening in that meeting. With Gen AI and these new tools, the AI itself actually will analyze what's going on in these meetings, and it'll analyze what happened, it'll summarize it, it'll generate follow-up actions. With the agentic AI that's coming, it's going to be kicking off a whole host of new processes that happen. So I think when you really think about AI, what's going to happen in the near future is you're seeing this like pairing with humans, where the human is like superhuman now with AI, and they're able to really drive up their productivity significantly. Like for us, when we have customer meetings, in the old days, we'd have to go back and enter in all the findings into a form, and it would take maybe an hour, 2 hours to do that. With these new tools, it's a few minutes that data has been summarized by AI and it's ready for the next step. So folks on my team can just move on to the next meeting in their day. So I think it's just beginning. And I think Gentic, it's going to really take that next step forward, where you're going to be able to like enable entire workflows that multiple cognitive steps can happen. You don't have to stop and get human interaction. It'll just move forward, go through the entire process. So it's very different in my estimation.
Yeah, absolutely. And the vulnerabilities too. When I talk to clients, I hear a lot of fear, uncertainty, and doubt wrapped around the tools, the models, but this is completely different. And this is already changing our world. As you said, transcripts, simple notes, they being input into your CRM is just the beginning. Like you said, agentive, that's actually going back, adding all of those details into records, creating the follow-up timeline, creating the next meeting that you agree to verbally, all this stuff. This sounds science fiction, but it absolutely is there today. And simple things where I think a lot of people in our industry tend to lean into bots, of course, because we all believe that's the number one way to save in contact centers is to automate the front end of the customer experience. But that's where a lot of the fear lies. But also there's a lot of tools and agentic technologies that can help in billing, human resources, moving documents, storing them in the right place, naming them in the right way. There's so many benefits for this technology and improvements and efficiencies that we're literally just scratching the surface. So this time really is different. Although I'm a macro guy and I always hate the idea of it saying this time is different, but clearly this one I believe is. I'd like to talk first about some of the tools that can actually be delivered today. I find a common string or thread that gets pulled whenever I'm having conversations with customers is what are the tools that we can deploy today that don't take a huge lift, that have shown proven ROI? Ryan, I'd love to get your take on conversational analytics, agent guidance, and let's just talk through these tools. I'd love to hear your experiences. Let's just talk through each one, starting at conversational analytics.
Yeah, I think, and one key thing you got to always remember here when you look at these AI functions and features is you've got different classes of companies that are getting into this space. You got your leading edge open AIs and Perplexities and Anthropics, companies like that are creating their own sort of best in class tools to do these things on a cutting edge basis. And you got that middle stream ones, your Gongs, your observed AIs that are, they're bringing AI capabilities into essentially sales automation or customer service automation. And then you've got that other piece, which is the big dogs, right? The AWS, Google, Microsoft, Salesforce, where they're bringing in those tools as part of their overall platform. So the way I always look at this, and this is just the consultant in me, is really have to take a look at what's your overall goal. Are you looking to roll something out fast that's going to give you like an immediate bump? Then you might want to go to like a best in breed type option. Are you looking to be on the cutting edge? Then you might need to be on like an open AI or an Anthropic. If you're already a big customer of Google or an AWS, take a look at what they're doing already, because you're going to find that they're not that far behind. So I think there's a number of different pathways you can go down here.
For me, when I think about each of these, because I get the benefit of spending so much time with the suppliers and looking under the hood and what they're doing, I don't disagree. There's the hyperscalers that you mentioned, the Metas, there's the large language model and generative AI companies like OpenAI, Anthropic, and there's many of them, right? They're all doing their side, but they haven't quite yet doubled down on point solutions specifically for contact center. When I think of like conversational analytics, you mentioned the Observe, and there's many other companies. The beauty of tools like a conversational analytics, this is not new for us again. Voice analytics has been around for, gosh, I want to say over 10 years at least, but the accuracy wasn't really there. The costs were pretty high. I don't know if you remember, Ryan, when some of the early stage voice analytics came out, but they just pure cost, you still couldn't analyze 100% of the calls because it would be ridiculously expensive. You could, but no contact center could budget for that. And the accuracy was only in that 80 to 85% range, which really what tipped the needle, in my opinion, that made this accelerate this whole conversation is really the accuracy that the conversational AI tools brought to the forefront. Getting over that 90+%, I think people often fail to realize that first 80 to 85 was relatively easy compared to the next couple of 5-point iterations, right? So by the time you get to 95% accuracy, some things have happened under the hood that has made this viable as a real tool that delivers ROI.
And Fred, I would add that even the latest tools that are showing these like supervisor views of everything that's happening and the live sentiment changes on calls and chats and being able to just pop in at the right moment. We wish we had these tools 10 years ago, right? They're pretty groundbreaking.
Yeah, I can't tell you how many times I look at something and think 20 years ago when I was running centers, it would have been amazing. 25, however long. I started in this industry when I was like a baby, clearly, but it was a long time ago. I would have loved to have had any of these tools. But I know you've had personal experience with the agent guidance, agent assist. That clearly is a tool that today shows return on investment. And can you share any of your insights on that?
Yeah, I think for a long time we've been looking to really guide agents through calls and through interactions using scripts and just rules-based logic. It breaks down the moment you start having a conversation, right? It's like you can program it, but the moment they go into some other thing or they start talking about their kid, the script is completely off and you're back to a human thinking about what they're going to say. And all of a sudden with these new tools, you're starting to get real-time dynamic scripting, essentially, guidance that's happening in the moment. I think the promise has always been, and we're starting to see this actually being delivered, where you're saying, hey, I see that the customer is trending in this direction. Maybe you need to change the way you're wording that, or you need to go back and address something that you missed that the customer brought up a couple minutes ago. Or, hey, there's a knowledge base article that you should be looking at that's going to help you deliver a more accurate answer there. Or maybe even telling a supervisor, hey, you might want to hop in and get involved in this conversation because it's going in a bad direction. So you're starting to see those kinds of tools coming out, and all the major CCaaS players, including Nextiva, has these tools. You're seeing it in other kinds of point solutions like Icera and other knowledge-based tools that are out there. So again, I think you have to look at the key, how do you want to deploy this? What are the use cases that you're shooting for? But the capabilities here are moving along very quickly. And I think it's going to make a huge difference in the ability to do first call resolution at a completely different level.
Yeah, absolutely. And in the next two, oftentimes I find that people aren't even aware yet that these technologies are out there. But the accent neutralization and language translation tools, those are, in my opinion, no-brainers when it all comes down to technology that contact centers can deploy today. And just for the audience, accent neutralization is the softening of an accent. It's not the changing. There was all kinds of early stage press and talk, and there still is talk in the industry about should we do this? Is it okay? The reality is the numbers show that the customers love it. The fact that it always improves the performance once it gets properly implemented and tuned. And language translation is a no-brainer. There's a whole segment of our industry that's wrapped around providing interpreters, and the interpretation using artificial intelligence, we've already had it on some devices in the early stage, but the quality of that this is now producing, you want to talk about an immediate cost savings. And I know some people that own language translation or interpreter firms, and the reality is we've known this is coming and now it's here. I don't know if you've had some experience around those two.
Yeah, I would say it's pretty mind blowing when you see the language translation happening in real time. One side's typing in English, the other side's typing in Russian or Afrikaans, and it's being translated back and forth as if there was no time in between. The accent neutralization one's interesting. When I first saw this, I was like, "Ooh, this might be objectionable, right? Somebody might feel offended that their accent's being removed." But in talking to some folks that have really strong accents, what I heard was the opposite, which is, I just want people to understand what I'm saying. I don't want to repeat myself. So this is actually good for me. So I think these tools are going to help with the human to human communication. It's going to speed things up for everybody.
Intent of it adding any of this technology is hopefully it improves the experience, right? And
Yep.
not just for the customer, but for the agent. I've always been a big employee experience drives customer experience, and I've seen it firsthand, even back when I was an agent. The reality is, like you, at first I was a little cautious, and of course, it didn't help that there was a random press. I don't even remember. I don't want to call anybody out, but I don't even remember, quite frankly, who published it talking about whitewashing the
Yeah.
world through accent neutralization. And it absolutely is not the case. Like you said, agents have actually given huge thumbs up to how it's helped them be better on the phones. So again, like you said, the language interpreter and chat, that's easy, but the voice is pretty impressive in the number of languages that can happen. And then finally, for me, orchestration, the back office, the moving of files, the moving of information and data, doing activities. To me, this is a no-brainer. There's a lot less risk on orchestration versus trying to go straight to your customer facing. But it's still all of these things in my mind. I think what I'll often find myself having to make sure to reiterate to clients is that all of this stuff takes time. It takes training and tuning. Nothing is plug and play and it works that day. Yeah, but these are all real logical, easy, currently being deployed, returning investment technologies that you can start with today. And that was a mouthful. Yeah. Any other insights on this one, Ron?
I would just say there's some new categories that are coming out very quickly that I think you're going to be added to this list, right? Like
Oh, yeah.
content generation. You guys are seeing all these things popping up where Canva can create things on the fly, new types of communication tools, meeting assistants. Like these are new categories that are being invented. And then I think even shortly thereafter, you're going to start seeing things like personal assistants, coaches, live creation of videos on the fly, thinking about putting together a presentation or a video for a customer. You just tell it what you want it to do and out pops a great video. So those things are all just on the horizon. They're all being built right now. So there's going to be a long list of different categories here, I think, that we're going to see very soon.
Yeah, absolutely agreed. Like we said, this is different. So when we talk about AI readiness, let's dive into this. And I know just for the audience, get your questions ready because part of the intent of this is we didn't want to do death by PowerPoint. We'd love to hear questions from you and actually be able to have some live interaction. So be prepared. But let's talk about AI readiness. And from your perspective, Ryan, how do you define AI readiness? Because this is a term that people have been throwing around.
Yeah.
So how do you define it and why is it important?
Yeah, it's always tough to know if you're ready to adopt a new technology because you don't quite know what it is. Typically, what I recommend to my customers is get started, experiment, right? Start to play around with it, get familiar with it. It's always going to feel awkward at first. So if you're asking yourself, are you ready? Really, the questions are, do you have clarity of purpose, right? Do you know your customer? Do you know what you're trying to accomplish? Do you have systems in place? Do you have your data clean? Is it in a place where your AI tools can then go access it? Because ultimately, AI is data hungry, right? So that's the key thing is making sure your data is available and in a good state. Experiment, look for low hanging
Yeah.
fruit, and then think about things that are like really repetitive. I would say that that's the low hanging fruit for most companies. Make sure you've got a data knowledge base, right? What kinds
Yeah.
of things are being surfaced so that the AI can consume those? Because again, AI is data. So are your systems going to play nice with it? So get your IT house in order. Doesn't mean you have to go through a whole MDM exercise. You don't have to have everything perfect. These tools work well with unstructured data. but
Right.
getting it all in a place where it's accessible and it's good data, it's not making things up, it's going to eliminate hallucinations and make things a lot better. So I think that's the key thing from a readiness perspective. And then have a process that you're going to go through to start small, prove the value, scale it up, and then go on to the next project.
Yeah. Yeah, when I talk about AI readiness, it is really, and as the consultant, you'll appreciate this, there's always people, processes, then technology.
Yep.
And it starts out with one, understanding where you're at, understanding your current on the operation side, your people, your processes, your change management. What do you have in place? How have you been engaging agents? There will naturally be fear of artificial intelligence, so much so that we've heard plenty of cases where agents, live agents, humans, are actually trying to derail AI deployments because they're afraid of it. And that's what happens when you don't explain your strategy. You don't talk about it. You don't prepare your team. So it always starts out with the people and the processes, right? Data governance policies, accurate and up to date policies. Like I was an agent, I was a supervisor, I ran centers, help companies start new ones. It's really hard to keep all that stuff up to date. So I get it. But we're preparing for what I believe is a step change in the way companies run. And again, I believe the contact center is the tip of the spear. And that's why it's so important, right? And then you get into the data, the technology side. Yes, your infrastructure is going to have to be updated. Yes, all your prem-based, gosh, what last report, 30% of the Fortune 500 still had premise-based telephony. All those things we talked about, like live agent assist, conversational analytics. If you're not on a modern solution, if you haven't even gone from premise to cloud yet, you can't even get real good accuracy because you're having to diartize. You have to split the audio between the customer and the agent side and then analyze it. So not only that, but it adds additional compute and there's so many things to get ready. I think what it all comes down to is something we talked about earlier, though, is just preparing your organization for this change, doing the work, getting your teams and your change management in place and your people. And in my mind, not just because I'm talking my book, but in my mind, because the reality is this is coming, whether we're the ones, helping deliver this change or it's somebody else. The change is coming. You're not going to get away from this. This is not going to go away.
Yep.
We're not going to wake up tomorrow and like social media find out that only 5 agents need this and it'll
Right.
be owned by marketing. This isn't IVR. This isn't all those things that came before. This is a significant change. So I anything else you want to share with that, Ryan?
Yeah, I would just say it's about good leadership. It starts there, right? People have to be clear-eyed as to what the goals are, and you got to communicate it honestly and transparency throughout the organization. And I think getting the what's in it for me nailed at every level so people understand how their jobs are going to be made easier and better and they're going to be more productive. I think people get on board. But as you said, there's fear, uncertainty, and doubt in all of this kind of stuff, especially when you're thinking about Skynet and robots taking your job and things like that. At the end of the day, when they start using these tools, they go, oh, this is great. This is making me so much more productive at all levels. We've all experienced that in our personal lives and in some of these tests, but that's what these organizations are going to have to go through as a whole. Is we're all going to have to adopt this new technology and realize the world's not going backwards.
Yeah. Yeah, they're definitely not going to go backwards unless for some reason an EMP goes off or something like that. Maybe then we can avoid Skynet. But
Right.
nonetheless, I think another key point that I definitely feel like I have to bring up is the quality of not just your documentation, but your data, and not to the extent where you have to normalize and structure and everything today before you deploy a lot of this technology. But you do have to make sure you have the right data. And a great example, talking to a client, had over 1 million calls recorded and stored in dual channel in stereo in the right format for it to properly, so they had good accuracy. But with 1 million different records, how do you define which one of those 1 million you actually want the system to train on? You got to think about this stuff. So with that being said, this is the most important part. I want to open the floor up and get some questions that are coming in. I know from the polls, we got still quite a few of you are in early stages. I'd love to hear any questions you guys have. So if you could chat in your questions and we can try to answer them as they come in.
All right, a couple questions here. So, what if our data is both in flat files and in systems? What's the bridge to get AI ready there?
Okay. Ryan, do you want to take that one? or do you want me to? Or
Go ahead, Fred.
yeah. So first of all, flat files are simple structured data. Those can be ingested, and that's really not all that much of a challenge anymore. Back in the day, when we used to have flat files from one system, SQL in another, a various data source in another, those can be pulled out, ingested. But don't think about it just from a structured data perspective. Think about your unstructured as well. All of your recordings, your chat, all of your transcripts, all of those things have value when it comes to modern conversational and large language models and all the technology we've been talking about.
Yeah, that's one of those things that I think almost feels magical about Gen AI is you can just dump, you can point it at web pages, you can put images in there, you can put a PDF, plain text files. It's amazing how you can just like import all of that stuff and it ingests it and does what it needs to. You don't have to go through big ETL processes to get everything in the perfect format like you used to. It's much more simple than it used to be.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I'll say from our perspective, as the data integration is a huge part of what we focus on in order to provide the right types of performance management improvement, is the updating of that data. So our team will say, okay, if it is a back of house system, internal app, or flat file, we'll work with you to figure out ways or create ways with our team to make sure that we're getting automated dumps of that data on a regular basis. So you don't always have to do that lift or remember to always push that in and scrambling right before some reports are due or whatever. So I think that's the thing to think about when you have in-house systems or flat files. Is a solution provider going to help create automation to bridge that gap?
I'm gonna stop sharing so we can have full screen so you guys can see just all of us. That's a good question though. A lot of people, if you haven't gone down that path, how would you know? That's a good question.
Another question regarding compliance. They speak more specifically to an industry, but how about for the healthcare industry, for financial credit card information processing, things like that? What do you need to look out for to make
Mm-hmm.
sure that AI doesn't utilize some of that information incorrectly or even have access to it?
Yeah, I can talk a little bit about that one, Scott. I think definitely one of the things that you see with Gen AI is the risk of data exposure, right? It's definitely a risk. If you turn on Gen AI, you don't put some protections in place, you could have a situation where something sensitive gets put out there to a broader audience than you want to. Just like any other system, it's important to know that you've got some security things you need to look out for. You've got some compliance standards you have to involve. So you got to make sure you include your data governance team, get your security assessment done before you release anything broadly. But the good thing is these tools do have the ability to indicate this is data that should not be surfaced or it should be surfaced only to certain kinds of people. That being said, it's not smart enough to go out there and say, hey, Joe should get this field, but Lisa shouldn't. You have to, just like any other system, you still have to configure what those security rules are going to be and know who should have access to certain things. And that includes back and forth with customers, right? Things like secure payment taking, HIPAA exchanges of information. You got to implement your masking on your chatbots. You have to have those rules in place. So don't think that you can just throw a bot on top of a bunch of sensitive data and it's going to know how to protect it. You do need to put some rules in place around it. And I would definitely work with a company that has experience doing that to make sure that you don't have to learn those lessons the hard way.
Yeah, and I'd say so look, we all know there's thousands of AI companies coming into the space. I literally get a message from a new one I've never heard of almost every day, trying to get into the portfolio. And what you're looking for, really, one, modern tools can inject prompt information to stop PII, patient information, whatever compliance. And they can also recognize patterns of attack vectors inside the model so that if somebody's trying to chat and ask a bunch of creative questions to try to get personal information out, they will recognize that immediately, stop that person, an individual or bot, right? Because bots attacking bots is going to become a common theme. There's a lot of things that the right companies that are building on this, that are heavily invested in enterprise level securities, are doing. And then there's a lot of companies that just came out of a early stage seed round that haven't had much time in the game that aren't thinking about how to properly secure this technology. So when it comes down to it, pick your partners well. But if your team is chosen to go down the path to build, going directly to the large language model companies, this is where I get afraid. It reminds me of Twilio, early stage. I don't know if you guys remember this, but when they first came to market with their SMS function, developers started just deploying it, not even thinking about compliance or rules or how we can or should use text messaging to clients. They just started developing on it. That's what I'm afraid of more often than not. When I find out a company's been building on this stuff since November of 22 when ChatGPT came out and our whole world shifted. So if you're building, I'd say as a company, you need to get your data people in, you need to get your IT team and your security team and make sure that you're doing this appropriately. This is, in my mind, there's maybe 1% of companies out there that should be building their own, period. And that's internal too. Think about the amount of data that's in HR. How much do you want a smart kid sitting there prompting that knows how to play the game could find all kinds of internal information that you clearly don't want in anybody else's hands. I just cautious people, pick the right solution providers, partner with the right people. If you don't feel like you've got the right teams, there are resources out there to be able to help you. But yeah, the ability to secure this stuff, it's just, did the companies, are you building it appropriately or did they build it appropriately?
And there are some, excuse me, there are some creative solutions too, where we have large household name credit card companies as customers, and there's one specifically working on a solution for that data has to stay in-house and it can't go to the cloud when it comes to certain types of calls that they do need to QA. And
Yeah.
for various reasons, created a hybrid solution where information can still be QA'd and performance metrics be ran on it, but that solution is in-house on-prem, and then analytics on it is done so that it's compliant with the very specific needs of that business. So also with the comment Fred made on a solution provider who's been there and done that, make sure that it's not their first rodeo when it comes to protecting your data, because the last thing you want to do is be holding the bag in a really bad situation. Yeah, thank you so much for the awesome insights and guidance on AI readiness. I think that's where everyone's at, is they're ready to go, and some have already started, and maybe just a little bit of help to get over the line is what they needed. So thank you so much, Fred. Thank you so much, Ryan. And for everyone attending, have a great rest of your day.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.